There is a room in Vatican City where 53 miles of shelving hold documents spanning nearly 2,000 years. Letters from Michelangelo, the trial records of Galileo, papal bulls that reshaped empires. For centuries, this collection has been called the Secret Archives. And that single word, secret, has fueled a mythology so powerful it has eclipsed the truth entirely. People have imagined hidden proof that Jesus never existed, time machines built by priests, evidence of extraterrestrial contact buried beneath marble floors. But here is what they rarely consider. The documents are not hidden. They never were. And what they actually contain might be far more unsettling than any conspiracy, because they force us to confront not what is concealed from us, but what we choose to worship instead. In this video, I use modern AI tools to reconstruct spaces within the Vatican that most will never physically enter, allowing us to move through reading rooms, archives, and the very pages of manuscripts that have survived since the 4th century. We will trace the journey of one particular book, the Codex Vaticanus, from its creation in the age of Constantine to its presence on your screen right now. And then we will ask a different question entirely. Not what the Vatican is hiding, but what we are. This is the Cortile del Belvedere, the Belvedere courtyard, as it appeared in the late 15th century. Pope Nicholas V has just established the Vatican Library in 1451, and the shelves are beginning to fill with manuscripts gathered from monasteries across Europe, from the ruins of Constantinople, from private collections purchased or confiscated during the upheaval of the age. The library is not yet the sprawling labyrinth it will become. It is, at this moment, a declaration of intent. The Church will be the custodian of knowledge, the keeper of the ancient world. Imagine standing in this courtyard as a scholar in 1475, the year the first catalogue is completed. You have traveled for weeks to reach Rome. You carry letters of introduction, recommendations from bishops and princes, and even then, you are not guaranteed access. The manuscripts inside are considered too precious, too fragile, too dangerous to be handled carelessly. You might spend months waiting for permission to view a single codex. What you would not know, could not know, is that one of those manuscripts, catalogued simply as Vat Dorai Doar 12-9, is among the oldest complete Bibles in existence. It was written on vellum sometime between 300 and 330 CE, possibly in Egypt, possibly in Caesarea, by scribes whose names are lost to us. The ink has faded in places. Later, hands have retraced letters, added notes, corrected what they believed were errors. But the text itself, the Greek Old Testament, the Greek New Testament, has survived 16 centuries of fire, flood, war, and neglect. This is the Codex Vaticanus. For most of its existence, the Codex Vaticanus was studied by almost no one. The Vatican Library authorities restricted access so severely that scholars in the 19th century complained bitterly of being turned away, of being allowed only brief glimpses, of having their requests denied without explanation. Conspiracy theorists would later point to this as proof that the Church was hiding something. But the reality is more mundane and, in its own way, more frustrating. The manuscript was fragile, the bureaucracy was slow, and the Vatican, like many institutions guarding priceless artifacts, erred on the side of caution to the point of paralysis. Early attempts to collate the text were filled with errors. Transcriptions made in the 16th and 17th centuries were incomplete, sometimes wildly inaccurate. It was not until the 19th century that serious scholarly work began, and even then, progress was painstaking. The Codex Vaticanus was studied in fragments, debated in academic journals, referenced in footnotes, but rarely seen in full by anyone outside Rome. What we do know is this: the manuscript contains the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, along with most of the New Testament. It is missing portions of Genesis, some of the Psalms, and the final chapters of Hebrews onward, likely lost to damage over the centuries. But what remains is extraordinary. The text predates the standardization of the biblical canon. It offers a window into how early Christians read, copied, and transmitted their scriptures. For scholars of textual criticism, it is not merely important. It is foundational. And now, for the first time in history, you can view every surviving page without leaving your home. The digitization of the Vatican Library began in earnest in the 21st century. In partnership with a Japanese company, NTI Data, the library announced plans to digitize all 82,000 manuscripts in its 135 collections, 41 million pages spanning nearly 2,000 years. The first phase focused on 3,000 works, to be scanned and uploaded over a 4-year period. The Codex Vaticanus was among the early priorities. Today, if you navigate to the digital Vatican Library, you can access vat.gar112.9 directly. The interface is not perfect. There are no hyperlinks to specific chapters or verses. You must scroll manually through the folios, searching for passages the way a medieval scholar might have, by memory, by familiarity, by patient attention. And yes, a watermark sits prominently on each page, a reminder that even in the digital age, institutions cling to marks of ownership. But the manuscript is there, open et joy, accessible. The same vellum pages that Erasmus sought permission to examine in the 16th century, that textual critics fought for decades to study, are now available to anyone with an internet connection. Imagine the magnitude of that shift. For 500 years, the Codex Vaticanus was locked behind walls, guarded by librarians, accessible only to the privileged few on it. And now, a student in Jakarta, a pastor in rural Ohio, a curious teenager in São Paulo can pull up the same images that once required letters of introduction and months of waiting. This is not secrecy. This is the opposite of secrecy. But secrecy makes a better story. The Vatican Apostolic Archive, renamed from the Vatican Secret Archives in 2019 by Pope Francis specifically to dispel conspiracy theories, has been the subject of speculation for generations. The word secretum in the original Latin name never meant hidden or forbidden. It meant personal, private, the private archives of the Pope, as opposed to public records. But English speakers heard secret, and their imaginations filled in the rest. The theories are familiar by now. The archives contain proof that Jesus had a wife and descendants. The Church possesses the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, the actual holy lance that pierced Christ's side. A time machine called the Chronovisor, supposedly built in the 1950s by a priest named Father Pellegrino Ernetti, sits in a vault somewhere beneath the Basilica. The Illuminati have infiltrated the highest levels of the hierarchy. None of this withstands scrutiny. The Chronovisor's story originated with Ernetti himself, who claimed the device could view any moment in history using light and sound waves. He produced a single blurry photograph, allegedly showing Christ on the cross. The image was later traced to a wooden crucifix in a church in Perugia. No physicist has ever verified that such a device is possible. No corroborating evidence has ever emerged. The Illuminati, the actual historical Illuminati, were a Bavarian secret society founded in 1776. They were suppressed by the government less than a decade later, in 1785. The idea that they survived, infiltrated the Vatican, and now control global events is a fantasy built on anti-Catholic tropes and the novels of Dan Brown. And the notion that the archives contain suppressed gospels or proof that Jesus did not exist ignores a fundamental reality. If such documents existed, they would more likely strengthen the historical case for Jesus, not dismantle it. The presence of early Christian records, even controversial ones, would confirm that the movement was significant enough to generate written controversy. Silence would be far more damaging than documentation. Historians who have spent years in the Vatican archives report something far less dramatic than conspiracy theorists imagine. The reading room is not a torchlit dungeon accessible through hidden doorways. It is a climate-controlled facility, similar to university archives around the world. Visitors cannot wander freely among the shelves, not because of dark secrets, but because manuscripts must be handled carefully to prevent damage. The documents themselves are largely what you would expect from the administrative records of a major institution over 2 millennia. Land disputes, trade licenses, excommunications for offenses, both grand and petty, letters negotiating with the Mongols, attempts to broker peace during the 100 Years' War. The 60 meters of scroll documenting the suppression of the Knights Templar are available to scholars. The deal was not secret at the time, and is not secret now. There are over 100,000 letters preserved in the main register series from the first half of the 14th century alone. These were produced by the papal bureaucracy and the Pope's personal secretaries. They tell us about kings and cardinals, about monks fighting over who would become the next abbot, about ordinary people petitioning for favors from a distant authority. They are a record of human ambition, conflict, and faith. They are not evidence of UFOs. What we do not find are oblique references to the Illuminati. What we do not encounter are secret deals to destroy evidence of Christ. The papacy is, and has always been, one of the most scrutinized institutions on earth. Its scandals were public knowledge at the time they occurred. The idea that additional, more explosive scandals are hidden in the archives requires ignoring everything we know about how bureaucracies function and how information travels. But here's the strange part. The debunking of conspiracy theories is, in some ways, the easy work. The harder question is why the conspiracies appeal to us in the first place. Why do we want there to be hidden proof, secret documents, forbidden knowledge locked away by powerful institutions? Perhaps it is because the alternative is more uncomfortable. If the Vatican is not hiding the truth, then the truth is already available. And if the truth is already available, we have no excuse for not grappling with it. The Codex Vaticanus is online. The Codex Sinaiticus, another 4th century manuscript, is fully digitized with transcriptions adjacent to the photographic images. The Dead Sea Scrolls have been published. The Nag Hammadi Library, including the so-called Gnostic Gospels, has been translated into every major language. The historical and textual evidence for early Christianity is more accessible now than at any point in human history. And yet people continue to search for hidden documents, suppressed truths, secrets that would change everything. Because secrets are exciting. Because secrets absolve us of responsibility. If the answer is locked away, we cannot be expected to act on it. This is where the conversation shifts. A man named Sean Ryan, a former Navy SEAL turned podcast host, once described a moment that stopped him cold. He had purchased a truck, a vehicle he loved, a machine he had worked hard to afford. And one day, hail came. The storm lasted minutes. When it was over, the truck was dented, pockmarked, damaged in ways that could not be easily repaired. His reaction surprised him. He felt rage. Not frustration, not disappointment, rage. The kind of anger that seemed disproportionate to the circumstance. It was, after all, just a truck. Metal and glass and rubber. Replaceable in the grand scheme of things. But in that moment, it did not feel replaceable. It felt like an attack on something essential. He later recognized what had happened. The truck had become more than transportation. It had become a symbol of success, of identity, of worth. And when it was damaged, he felt damaged. This is idolatry. Not the golden calf variety. Not statues in temples, but the quieter kind. The kind that creeps in without announcement. The elevation of a thing. A car, a house, a career, a relationship, to a position it was never meant to hold. The moment when a blessing becomes a burden, when gratitude curdles into possession, when we begin to serve what was meant to serve us. There is a story in the Hebrew scriptures that illuminates this dynamic. In the book of Numbers, the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness. They have complained again about their circumstances. And God sends venomous snakes among them. People are bitten. People die. In desperation, they cry out for help. Moses is instructed to craft a bronze serpent and lift it on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at the serpent and live. It is a strange remedy, almost paradoxical. A graven image is the means of healing in a culture that forbids graven images. But it works. The people look, and they are healed. The bronze serpent was good. It was given by God for a specific purpose, and it accomplished that purpose. The problem came later. By the time of King Hezekiah, some 700 years after Moses, the bronze serpent is still around, and the people are burning incense to it. They have given it a name, Nehushtan, which means roughly the bronze thing, and they are worshipping it. A tool of deliverance has become an object of devotion. A gift has become a god. Hezekiah destroys it. The theologian Wes Huff has observed that almost anything can follow this trajectory. A relationship that begins as a blessing can become an idol when our entire sense of worth depends on it. A job that provides for our family can become an idol when we sacrifice our family to keep it. A ministry, a calling, even a good and holy thing can become an idol when it becomes the source of our identity rather than an expression of it. The question is not whether we possess things. We will always possess things. The question is whether we are possessed by them. Imagine standing in the Vatican Library, surrounded by manuscripts that have survived for centuries. These are treasures, genuinely. They represent the labor of countless scribes, the faith of generations, the slow and fragile transmission of knowledge across time. They are worth preserving, worth studying, worth digitizing and sharing with the world. But they are not ultimate. They are not the source. They are witnesses, pointing beyond themselves to something they cannot fully contain. The Codex Vaticanus is a 4th century manuscript. It is vellum and ink. It will eventually, despite all our preservation efforts, decay. The digital images will outlast the physical pages, but servers fail. Formats become obsolete, institutions collapse. Nothing made by human hands is permanent. And that is precisely the point. The conspiracy theorist wants the Vatican to be hiding something, because the hidden thing would be solid, tangible, definitive. A document that proves everything. A relic that settles all questions. But faith has never worked that way. The earliest Christians did not have the Codex Vaticanus. They had oral tradition, fragmentary letters, communities gathering in homes to share bread and remember. The text came later, codified what was already believed, preserved what was already practiced. The truth was never locked in a vault. It was loose in the world from the beginning, carried by ordinary people who had encountered something they could not explain and could not keep silent about. And here we are, 20 centuries later, with more access to ancient manuscripts than any generation before us. We can read the Greek text that Origen studied. We can examine the margins where medieval scribes left notes. We can compare variant readings across dozens of witnesses, tracing the subtle evolution of words and phrases through time. The archives are open. The question is what we will do with what they contain. There is a daily battle in the human heart that has nothing to do with conspiracy theories or ancient manuscripts. It is the battle of calibration, the quiet and constant work of keeping things in their proper place. A car is a car. A career is a career. A house is shelter, not sanctuary. Relationships are gifts, not guarantees. Even scripture itself, the physical book, the leather binding, the gold-edged pages, can become an idol if we worship the container rather than encountering what it contains. The goal is not detachment. The goal is not to care about nothing. The goal is to care rightly, to hold blessings with open hands, to receive what is given without grasping, to lose what is taken without losing ourselves. This is harder than it sounds. The bronze serpent was good, and the people still burned incense to it. The truck was just a truck, and the man still felt rage when it was damaged. We are wired to attach, to invest, to pour our identity into things that can be dented and scratched and destroyed. The work of faith is not to stop being human. It is to remember, again and again, what deserves our ultimate allegiance and what does not. The Vatican Apostolic Archive will continue to release digitized manuscripts. Scholars will continue to study them, publish papers, debate interpretations. The Codex Vaticanus will remain one of the most important witnesses to the early biblical text, cited in footnotes, examined in seminars, preserved in climate-controlled storage and high-resolution images. And somewhere, right now, someone is searching the internet for proof that the Vatican is hiding something. They will find forums and videos, and elaborate theories. They will learn about the Chronovisor, about the Illuminati, about secrets buried beneath St. Peter's Basilica. They will feel the thrill of forbidden knowledge, the satisfaction of being among the few who know the real truth. But the real truth is available. It has been available for years. The manuscripts are online. The archives are open to qualified researchers. The conspiracy theories persist not because the evidence is hidden, but because the evidence is ordinary. Because the actual contents of the Vatican Library are not explosive revelations, but bureaucratic records, theological disputes, the mundane machinery of an institution that has endured for 2 millennia. The spectacular lie is always more appealing than the unspectacular truth. And that, perhaps, is the deepest idolatry of all. The worship of mystery for its own sake. The elevation of the hidden over the revealed. The preference for what we imagine over what we have been given. This is what the archives contain. 53 miles of human history, written on parchment and vellum and paper, preserved by scribes and librarians and climate control systems. Letters from kings and peasants. Records of excommunications and pardons. The slow, patient work of an institution trying to maintain coherence across centuries. And at the center, manuscripts like the Codex Vaticanus. Ancient, all fragile. Now, digitized. Witnesses to a faith that began with a handful of followers in a corner of the Roman Empire and spread across the world. The pages are open. The question is not what the Vatican is hiding. The question is what we will do with what is revealed. What should I reconstruct next? Let me know in the comments.